Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday, and welcome back to another Wake Up with YPN. I am Jonathan Fell, Vice Chair of your Iowa City Young Professionals Network at the Iowa City Area Association of Realtors. Here today to talk with us about Livable Communities is aging specialist for Johnson County Social Services, Jeff Kellbach. And Jeff, we're going to get into it here in a second, but before we do, I always like to ask before we get started for everyone watching live with us today to remember to ask questions as we go along. We may not get to them during the conversation, but we certainly will do our best to get to them at the end. And it certainly helps us flesh out our conversation if we do have questions from y'all. So with that, Jeff, would you mind telling us a bit about your career history and how it ultimately landed you where you are now?
Yeah, it's a non-traditional way. It seems like most people have that. I went to school for therapeutic recreation, so doing a lot of activity professionals really started out in my career at working at a subacute center. Enjoyed working with older adults, but when I was in school, my practicum or internship was working with younger, children, the younger population.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that's definitely what I'm going to do. And then this first job, I just needed a job, and was working with older adults, and I really loved that. Decided to move back to the area and worked with kids, and didn't feel like that was quite the right path. Worked at Pathways Adult Day Health Center as an activity coordinator, and then became the director and executive director. Was there for quite a few years before moving into this role as the aging specialist 6 years ago.
Okay, excellent. And so we'd love to hear a little bit more about that work. So could you tell us a little bit more about your role as an aging specialist? Um, Tell us what that means. What does it
Yeah.
entail? What do you do? Sis?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird term, an aging specialist. Essentially, what I do is I provide care coordination for older adults in the community, anybody in Johnson County. That include caregivers as well, trying to help them out with navigating through the resources, programs that are available to them, trying to eliminate roadblocks, any barriers that they have to accessing those services. So sometimes it can be um, complicated figuring out where can I even go and start. So that's where I can come in and help people figure out what are those options.
Mhm.
Doing the paperwork. I mean, I work with a lot of lower income older adults in particular. So trying to figure out housing options, try to figure out how to get
Yeah.
on Medicaid programming and those other programs that are out there that can help make it feasible for them financially and have a good quality of life here in our community.
Excellent. As you and do you have a team of folks that works with you?
So I'm part of a team
Okay.
over here in social services. So we have a couple of navigators
Oh, sure.
that are similar to what I do, and they work more with the 18 to 64 population. I tend to work more with the 65 plus population. We also have a mobility coordinator over here that can help out with all sorts of transportation related issues and just even how to use the bus.
Oh, yeah.
We have such great public transit here with free public transit in Iowa City now. Just I think people needing to know, how do I get from point A to point B? So there's some really great resources here in social services right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we move into the topic for us today, and maybe what's specifically of interest for us as realtors, um, let's talk about the term livable community. What constitutes a livable community?
Sure. So, and then first off, the Livable Community, we have an initiative here at the county, started in 2007. It's called Livable Community for Successful Aging. And the whole idea of a livable community is that it's a safe, secure, community, offers choices to where to live, how to get around, and
Hmm.
it equitably serves residents of all ages, ability levels, incomes, races, ethnicities, and other backgrounds. So, we tend to focus more on the older adult population with our livable community for successful aging, but it really does encompass everyone, the whole community.
Excellent, excellent. So, as part of that initiative and part of trying to build up and make the Iowa City area, Johnson County, a livable community. What are some of the ways that you in your role are seeing results when it comes to building and investing in that livable community? Um, these are some great things that we want to try to do to make this area, accessible and uh, livable for all of our residents.
Sure.
But how does that play out in real life?
Yeah. So I should mention too, there's 8 domains of livability. So there's a lot of different things to kind of take a look at: housing, outdoor spaces, buildings, transportation, civic participation and employment, communication, information, respect and social inclusion, social participation, and health services and community support. So just a few things, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, just a
with
few.
yeah, so what we've kind of done with our, we have a policy board through our Livable Community Initiative, and we have several action teams and committees. So, some of the things, we have a monthly newsletter that comes out through our communications committee. Um, in the past, we had a transportation committee, and one of the things that came out of that was a program that still exists. It's a medical transportation program that now is housed through United Way of Washington and
Hmm.
Johnson counties, the RSVP medical transportation program that
Oh,
provides
sure.
volunteers to provide medical trips to the 55 plus population. There's been a lot of other successes. Our housing action team has had many different successes. They did a lot of education. Um, and right now, their focus has really been on accessory dwelling units.
Mm.
I know that's kind of a topic we can certainly talk a little bit more about here as well, what those are and what the heck that all means.
Yeah,
Should I go right into
yeah.
that?
Why don't you? Yeah, let's do it. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? I mean, we generally speaking probably understand kind of the high level, but tell us how those uh, ADUs would benefit or help what you do.
Yeah, I mean, so really, when we look at accessory dwelling units and these things, I mean, they've been around for a really long time, but I don't think that we all necessarily understand what they are or what they could be. I mean, we have an affordable housing issue. This
Mhm.
is just one of those means to help alleviate some of the housing options, to provide some more housing options for folks and potentially care as well. So accessory dwelling units is really kind of it's a property. It can be attached to the house, so it could be in the basement. It could be um, in upper level. It can be above a garage. It can be a garage conversion, or it could be a detached building on the same property lot, right? Um, what that really, the reason we have these, or that they've been around for so long. I mean, Fonzie, and this is really a dated reference here with Happy Days, but Fonzie lived in a accessory dwelling unit. He lived above
Yep.
the garage of the Cunninghams, and has its own kitchen, its own living space, its own entrance into it, and that's really kind of some of the components that really make it an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Um, what this can be used for is really multiple ways. We look at it as, if it's an older adult, perhaps they need some care and they're able to maybe prevent going to a higher level of care by having somebody on the same, lot that can help them out, but yet
Hmm.
maintain their own privacy. So they could live in the main home, they could live in the, accessory dwelling unit. The accessory dwelling unit obviously is going to be much smaller typically. By most ordinances out there, it's probably about, 650, 700 square foot, you know, property, maybe a little bit bigger than that. Um, so they could get, help if they need medication help or they may
Sure.
need some assistance getting up and down. But, having somebody on the same property, but also not in the same domicile. So it's kind
Yeah.
of nice in that regards. It could also be a source of revenue. So it can be rented out, either the main home or the ADU. In some instances, they could both be rented out, but that's, most places are going to have a property owner living on the code will usually have a property owner living on the same site. But as we look at older adults, their incomes, maybe more stagnant with Social Security just being COLA increases, and trying to look at how can we get some additional revenue? Well, that would be a source of some additional revenue coming in for them to be able to offset that property taxes. So it does have a lot of different functions that it could really, serve as. And if it is rented out, well, once again, that could be rented out as something that's a little bit more affordable, something that's certainly a different type of thing. There's a lot of apartment setting, but having your own kind of a residence with, if it's a detached, it certainly wouldn't have a shared wall, or even if it is attached,
Right.
it's possible that it, isn't necessarily above or below or, interfering. It'd probably be a lot
Yeah.
quieter environment. So,
Yeah. And I think what's a key point that you brought up is that we can look at that from both sides, right? It's not just that the ADU would be something that potentially an older adult could live in or rent, or as provided, maybe a more affordable option for housing, but it's also an option for folks who are on Social Security with that cost of living only increase, that they could then rent out themselves to offset their own expenses. And I think that's also an important point, that this is kind of two sides of the same coin to help out our older adults.
yeah, I mean, I think one
Yeah.
thing that we've really looked at with this, Jonathan, is, I mean, the average space in a home. I mean, when we look back from 1950 to 2020, the median square footage of a new single family home in 1950 was 983 square feet. And in 2020, 2,261 square feet. Um,
Yep.
Number of people per household has gone down from 3.8 in 1950 to 2.5 in 2020. So you're looking at, an average square footage per person of 292 versus 904. So, we have gotten to a point where it's a little bit, bigger. Everything's just
Yeah.
bigger. And I think, having some smaller homes is really necessary to, it diversifies that housing portfolio as well. So, sure, this may be used for caring for an individual, but, you know, it's it's not always going to be that you're going to be caring for that individual for 20
Right.
plus years. So having some flexibility with how that can be utilized. I mean, heck, this could be something that I could look to, build on my property, and maybe I'll move into the accessory dwelling unit and rent out the main home because I don't need all that space in the future.
Right.
I just think there's a lot of flexibility with it. We are lucky that the city of Iowa City has had some ordinances in the past, and then they did just pass something in the fall, kind of expanding out the ordinance as far as what can be built on there. We're really looking forward. Our housing action team is just recently working on a video highlighting ADUs that have been built in Johnson County. I think there's 5 different properties that they have videoed, and we're looking forward to getting that video out so people can see, really just getting a chance to see what can that look like. What is
Yeah.
that? Because I think without seeing it, it's kind of hard to kind of tangibly say, oh, that's something that's a possibility. And I know it's not like an ADU is like, oh, well, everybody's just going to build these, right? I don't
Right.
think so. I mean, there's still a cost. I mean, I don't think that this necessarily, like I said, this isn't going to eliminate housing issues and affordable housing issues, but like it can be a very affordable option potentially for some middle class individuals. When
Yeah.
you look at the care costs, especially if it is for a loved one and they're trying to avoid going to an assisted living or prematurely going into a nursing home, you're looking at $7, $8, $9,000 costs a month for
Yeah.
a facility. If you're able to provide somebody maybe more of the environment that they're looking for and also have them close to family, I think that could be a really good option for a few people, maybe many.
Right.
I think,
Yeah.
some people say, well, I don't hear about a lot of these being built. And I think part of that is, well, have you talked about ADUs recently? I mean, without this being kind of a focus with our housing action team, it wasn't something that was probably on my radar as far as, oh yeah, so I think that
Yeah.
there's just a lot of education still. I think seeing what can be done will be a huge piece in just figuring out for individuals if that's an option now or down the road for somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. When that is available, please send it our way so we can share it more widely. Excuse me. So, kind of broadening back out, you mentioned your uh, community housing action team. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Johnson County Livable Community Housing Action Team and what y'all are doing and what that's?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that they're working on. Bill Gorman is the chair of our housing action team. He's tremendous in what he's been doing. He's been really working with communities, talking to all the municipalities within Johnson County about the ordinance, trying to make sure that we have more people allowing these to be built in their communities. So currently, Johnson County, the county as a whole, and the unincorporated areas has code that allows this. City of Iowa City has this, and depending on the other communities, there's some distinction of whether that's truly allowed or whether that would fall under something else. We're hopeful that with our housing action team, and anybody can join this group. It is a volunteer group that meets just once a month on the last Monday of the month, except for, of course, this month is Memorial Day. So we'll be meeting the first Monday in June at 1:30 if anybody's interested. I'll make sure I can give my contact information as well so that people know how to reach out to me. Basically, the easiest way to probably do it is just to call me. And that's 319-688-5842. And of course, if you have questions about an aging relative or you yourself is aging, just looking at resources or what programs might be eligible, you can contact me at that number. I also have a long email address. Can't be short. It's
Of course not. Of course
no.
not.
Then that's J Kellbach, JKELLBACH at Johnson County, Iowa, IOWA spelled out, .gov. People can email me any questions that they have there as well. I'm always happy to answer things. But some other things our housing action team is looking at. So I talked about affordable housing. They've looked at co-housing. So that's individual, typically an older adult. They maybe are still living in that home that's bigger and has some rooms available, renting out rooms within the house, trying to figure out all of the avenues there. But that's something that we've been exploring with a group, kind of an offshoot of our housing action team. And I'm really interested in taking a look at, lawn mowing, snow removal services. We have an agency that does some of that, but the need seems to be much greater than probably the funding that's available for that entity.
Absolutely.
So trying to figure out some solutions to that as well, because when I look at our mobile, home developments, many of them have seen some real sharp increases in lot rent and then have lost those services such as lawn care and snow removal. So trying to figure out how can we pair up people that need that service with individuals that may be willing to volunteer or do this at a low cost for individuals. And I think every community is really needing something like this. Snow removal is kind of a pain. It's a really difficult thing to plan out. Where lawn care is a little bit easier to kind of figure out. But those are some of the things that we've been working on within that group.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, some of this and some of the options that you've been exploring. I mean, I think about when I lived in Chicago, I rented the apartment above the garage or the carriage house behind somebody's building. Like, these are options that we see utilized in other places, and it's I think it's good to be on the, maybe we're not quite on the forefront, but getting these ideas set up and going in a way that maybe we can incorporate some of them here locally. I think it just makes sense for a lot of things. But yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so the team was awarded the 2023 Community Challenge Grant, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So can you tell us about that and what it entails and how it will benefit our community?
So yeah, we were really fortunate. Jessica Andino from the Affordable Housing Coalition was kind enough to write the grant for us. And this was a grant that's really just trying to do some more education and awareness regarding accessory dwelling units. So by doing Lego builds, so we had a series of these throughout the community at different libraries, at the farmers market, a lot of different events throughout the community. Really across the whole county, and it's going to continue on. I know we've had some at Hills Bank here recently, and the idea is having kids do these Lego builds trying to imagine some different creative ways to create an accessory dwelling unit. At the same time, we have a chance to talk with parents, let them know what these are and why we're trying to, bring awareness to this housing issue, option really. So it's been a very cool thing. We have some very large Legos as well for the display that kind of catch the eye, but it's just been it seems like a really simplistic type of a program, but it's a really cool program when people see it and I think just go, wow. We have there's a really great publication about ADUs out there that AARP puts together, and we have those at these events. It's called the ABCs of ADUs. In fact, an event we held, at ICAR at the Iowa City Area Association of Realtors space. It was just, I think this book is short, concise, but it gives people like, wow, there's a lot of different options and a lot of different reasoning as to why me look at this for me.
Yeah. Kayla was just chiming in to say that she saw the ADU Lego build at the home show last weekend, and the kids were loving the hands-on activity. I think that's a great way to not only kind of put that seed into another generation, right? Like they're going to probably at some point be like, oh yeah, I think I did that with Legos or something one time. Like that makes, and then having that opportunity, what a great way to get parents kind of, on hand to talk about something that to rope their kids into an activity.
Exactly. And I think it's that repeated seeing it too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what really kind of makes it go, I see this, but I didn't really look into it. I've seen it 2 or 3 times now. What the heck is this?
Right.
So I think it really, is that repetitive nature. And I agree. I think having kids get exposed to it just gives them those ideas too. Down the line, who knows? Maybe they're going to be the ones building these.
We can only hope that they fix a lot of stuff for us, right? Well, so we could keep going on about this for a long time, but as we wrap up today, I wanted to hear, more candidly from you, with the experience you have, what proactive things can we as realtors be doing to just operate with more awareness and consideration as it relates to ADUs, aging, the aging adult population, all of that?
I think with realtors, I mean, just really educating themselves about what these options are. We are trying to go out to communities right now and change ordinances and create ordinances to allow these. And I do think, if we can have individuals that are, willing to help support these efforts, I think it just does build a more robust, option for families, especially, maybe we are going to be seeing a lot more families that are wanting to stay together and have, multi-generational. This is one of those, this is really an option that you don't have to all be in the same house. I mean, heck, it could be that your adult kids have decided to move back in. Maybe they can move back in, but maybe they can move back into the accessory dwelling unit as well. So I think just educating them about these different options, first educating themselves, but then, helping educate individuals in the community. And, those individuals are going to make decisions, planning and zoning officials, city councils, about why these are a good thing. I think it can be scary to people seeing another building maybe potentially showing up on a property and like, oh, there goes the neighborhood. I don't think that's going to be, what you're going to see out of these. I mean, there's already ordinances in place that prevent this from being a party house, right? Which is sometimes what I think people might see it as, or that there's going to be, individuals moving into this property that is going to be just causing problems. I don't think that, those are going to be valid. So I think trying to dispel those kinds of assumptions or rumors or whatever it may be, misconceptions.
Yeah. I mean, it's what I tell my kids, pretty regularly. Don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet. Give it a shot. See what we're going to do, work through it, and we'll handle what comes as it comes. But I think you're right. I think the majority of people who are going to be looking into these ADUs and other similar opportunities to kind of expand the housing options are folks that just are really anxious to, get into their own place or, be a part of something that is benefiting the larger community. And I think that that's definitely a great opportunity for a lot of folks out there on either side of that. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Like I said, we could probably go on and on and on about this, but if folks have more questions for you, do you want to kind of tell us? We'll post everything in the comments, but maybe repeat your phone number and email. And then I know that you sent us before we started a couple of links that we will share, but just want to kind of figure out where people can get in touch with you or learn more.
Absolutely. So my phone number here direct at the office is 319-688-5842. And my email address is jkellbach, JKELLBACH at johnsoncountyiowa.gov. Those are great ways to get in touch with me. We also have a couple of different spots on our website. So www.johnsoncountyiowa.gov. There is, if you do /aging, it'll take you to my aging services page. There's also our Department of Livable Community. That one's a little bit janky to throw out there, but it's a department under johnsoncountyiowa.gov. It's called Livable Community for Successful Aging. You know, on there we have a lot of different resources, including a resource directory. So if people are trying to figure out, you know, what are some of those housing options? What are some of the in-home care options? There's a number of things on there. We work with providers to make sure that that's maintained and updated with current information. So it's a great place to go to try and find some answers. But I'm also there to help go, like, there's like 100 of these things on here. How do I kind of narrow this down? Or is this what I'm looking for? What does this exactly do? So I'm more than happy to help clarify those types of things for folks as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. We really appreciate your time today. We had one other, Joan Folkman says, thank you, great info. And so we just wanted to thank you again for your time. We'll definitely be reaching out with questions, and I know that there's a lot out there for us to sift through. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Thanks so much, Jonathan, for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all for joining us, and check in next for our next Wake Up with YPN next week.